Let's get into this conversation now. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts has raised concerns over the state of a number of departments, including state-owned entities, which appeared before the watchdog this week. Scopa chairperson Songezo Zibi on Tuesday decrying the impact that medical malpractice claims are having on the health department's ability to provide proper health care. He joins me now for more on this conversation. Mr. Zibi, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. One of your biggest priorities is to ensure that there is prudent spending of public money. So let's start with your thoughts on the cancellation of the 10 billion rand a year school feeding scheme tender by the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Kwahube. Is she leading by example, you think?
Yes, I think that it is appropriate for ministers, especially when a new minister comes into a portfolio, to assess what has been there before them. And if they are not certain about the appropriateness of a large expenditure such as this one, to make sure that proper due diligence is done and that the right decisions are taken. So I think she's doing the right thing.
Transnet's Financial Health is one of those entities you saw, and this is something that concerns you most. Do you get a sense, though, that the SOE is under a solid leadership which is capable of turning things around?
Look, the management, the board and management that you have at Transnet has been appointed since July last year. So the board was appointed last year, and many of the top executives were appointed subsequent to that. So many of them are just over a year in the job or just a few months in the job. And I think it is important that we give them a bit of runway to see whether the plans they've put in place are going to bear fruit or not. But that said, there are many, many concerning things about Transnet that all South Africans should pay attention to. It made a loss of over 7 billion rand. Its operational environment is constrained. There are security issues, there are audit outcome concerns, and so on. And we'll be holding the entity and the minister to account over the next year to make sure that all of those are addressed according to the plan they've laid down.
Still on Transnet, the locomotives, the 1,000 locomotives that were purchased, that's something that remains a sore point. Do you think that that matter is going to be resolved anytime soon?
Only I don't know, to be honest. It's a massive concern. And just so that viewers understand, there was the massive nearly 60 billion rand acquisition of just over 1,000 locomotives from China. Those became embroiled in the Gupta corruption allegations, which were well ventilated at the Zondo Commission. Those locomotives are still not here. And yet that 60 billion rand was borrowed from commercial banks. Transnet is having to pay that money and pay money for locomotives which are still not in the country. As we heard, the issue is held up between the CRCC, the supplier, the South African Revenue Service, as well as the South African Reserve Bank. So it cuts across different government agencies and the supplier as well. It's important that that is resolved as quickly as possible, because then Transnet can move greater volumes if we get even some of those locomotives in the country.
Let's talk health. The health minister coming before you, I think it was this week, and he is proposing setting up a panel that will adjudicate over medical health claims. The problem here, Mr. Zibi, is in part the lawyers, unscrupulous lawyers, who are claiming monies hand over fist. And some of them are found to have actually never existed in terms of people either being treated in a hospital or going under surgery and that being botched. Do you feel that the Minister of Health has a handle on this?
No, the minister, by his own admission, he does not have a handle on this, and that is why he presented to Parliament, because it is a runaway problem, although those claims have begun to reduce over the last couple of years since the Special Investigating Unit got involved. Just for understanding for viewers very quickly, when somebody feels that a public or private healthcare facility has not treated them right and they've incurred an injury, they can make a medical legal claim, which is they sue the health minister because of the injury that they incurred. That goes to the High Court. Some of those cases are fake. An increasing number of cases are fake, such as a person who has passed on, but the lawyers are claiming for future medical expenses and so on. What the minister is proposing is that these need to be, in the first instance, taken off the courts onto a panel of experts who are going to interrogate whether the claim is valid or not, and make recommendations about what the compensation should be, especially in terms of future medical expenses and so on. And if somebody is not happy from there on, then they can go to court. That would free up court space, especially in the Johannesburg High Court, where many, in the Eastern Cape and the Johannesburg High Courts, where many of these claims are lodged.
So one of the interesting points that the Minister of Health made, Mr. Zibi, was that it would seem that these lawyers have moved from making fraudulent claims at the Road Accident Fund and moving into his space, which is health. Do you think that the Road Accident Fund was able to do the right thing here, and that is to close the taps? Have they come before you with their books, for example, to say, we actually are on a good footing now?
No. The Road Accident Fund is not in a good footing as far as we know, and the lawyers have not moved. So you may have heard, Toli, that the Johannesburg High Court, if you enroll a case now for some matters, you'll only get a date in 2029. Over 50% of those cases are Road Accident Fund claims. You remove those, you might be able to get a court date maybe next year if you remove those cases, or maybe at the latest in 2027. By the way, the Auditor General will be briefing the Portfolio Committee on the Road Accident Fund next week.
Yeah, all right. And I'm asking you this deliberately because in the next few minutes I will be talking to the CEO, and we were hoping that he's probably going to tell us a good story about how he was able to close the taps of corruption. So you're stealing his thunder here. Let's then finally talk about the reasons that were given to you for the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Buti Manamela, missing a meeting or a hearing within Scopa. This was, I think, on the 3rd of this month. What reasoning was there, and does that talk to people respecting these important parliamentary committees?
The reason he gave was that he has to speak at a postgraduate program for the insurance SETA, if I remember correctly. And we felt that that was not a good enough reason. The good news, though, is that the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nkabane, then offered to come in person to the committee, and we will find a date as soon as possible for her to appear before the committee. We will also be paying a visit to some of the entities that fall under her oversight.
Yeah. Am I making a mountain out of a molehill when I say, and I don't need to remind you this, you were a journalist before, that some people or some ministers did have a penchant for not attending parliamentary meetings? Is that something that you feel is still ongoing, and maybe there should be severe consequences for it?
No, in fact, I mean, I wrote a stern letter to the minister. And in fact, we were supposed to have that hearing last night, but unfortunately we had to postpone it for the committee's own reasons, not because of the minister's doing. I have raised the issue both with the minister, and yesterday I had opportunity to have a discussion with the deputy president as well, to say we must get to a point where we identify certain days on which ministers will come, firstly, and secondly, that the presidency makes sure that those ministers show up, because ultimately, Parliament can shout as much as we want and we can sanction people, at the end of the day, it is the president who must set the tone. And if your boss says you must appear in parliament, people will appear in parliament.
Scopa chairperson Songezo Zibi, thank you very much for your time.